There's the political aspect of the speech, which is something that Judicial Watch has less of an interest in. I mean, generally speaking, I thought it was a good speech. Despite having some hard-charging language, it was something I think that left people with a good feeling when he highlighted some of, at least the individual citizens that were in attendance. It's hard to argue with fine heroes and Americans who are being highlighted by the president here.
Absolutely.
So, I think that probably benefited him politically. But importantly, from Judicial Watch's perspective, he focused on the rule of law issue of our day, which is the illegal immigration crisis. And what I appreciated about it, and something that we've often said here at Judicial Watch, is that, you know, this is a humanitarian crisis, and you're not showing compassion to illegal aliens by not securing the border. In fact, you're causing more heartache for them. The human trafficking that takes place at the border, it's all done through the cartels. No one travels to Mexico, or few do, through Mexico to our southern border without the sufferance of the cartels. The cartel takes a cut, and that cut can be severe, as the president highlighted the sexual abuse that takes place, the abuse of children, the kidnappings that take place in order to get more money from the families of those who are being shepherded up into the United States. And that's got to stop. You know, that's got to stop, because it will protect the illegal aliens who are in that terrible cycle of violence and misery. But it also obviously will protect Americans. So it's a twofer. It protects the safety and national security of America, and it prevents those populations that the left and the open borders crowd supposedly care about from being victimized further. And that's why Judicial Watch has been so forthright in upholding the rule of law here. The rule of law protects everyone. It protects those legally present, it protects American citizens, and it does protect illegal aliens. And illegal aliens aren't being subjected to the rule of law, and as a result, they're victimized. And so it's important that the wall be part of the solution, in my view, but it's not sufficient, in the sense that I've long proposed that the military take the lead in securing our border. But on top of that, we've got to focus on interior enforcement. Because you could have a wall 100 feet high, but as long as every major city in the nation is a sanctuary city, then, you know, people are going to get around that, or they're going to come in through other means to take advantage of the lackadaisical law enforcement at the local and state level, places like California and San Francisco. And that's where Judicial Watch has been focusing some of its energies. We have a taxpayer lawsuit against San Francisco that right now is in discovery. It's a taxpayer lawsuit. Taxpayers have the right to sue in California over the illegal expenditure of funds. And those sanctuary policies, especially San Francisco sanctuary policy, is not only deadly dangerous, it's illegal. So taxpayers have standing in court to sue. The court recently, or late last year, allowed the case to move forward, and we're going to go to trial against the San Francisco sanctuary policy in the middle of the year, which frankly is further along than the Justice Department's been able to get, because they've been trying to cut off funding but been hampered by the courts in upholding the rule of law there. So it's an important issue for Judicial Watch. We've been investigating trying to uphold the rule of law on immigration for almost 2 decades now. And we've been on the border, we've been in Guatemala, we've been in Mexico, we know what's going on. It's a mess there, and we should be thankful that we finally have the president, the first president in a generation, who's talking honestly about the border crisis.
So recently we had the government shut down with the whole wall funding, and border wall is something we've hit on a lot here. With the border wall and with border security, you mentioned some of the stuff Judicial Watch is doing and some of our lawsuits. So what's some other activities that Judicial Watch is doing to try and help with border security, help with the wall, help with sanctuary cities, as you mentioned?
Well, we've had, you know, I've talked about our visit to Guatemala. My colleague Chris Farrell and Irene Garcia were down there with Sarah Carter, and we exposed how these caravans initially were highly organized, composed mostly of men, and had many, many, many criminals in them. So these caravans aren't the sort of the tired and poor seeking refuge. These are men who are ne'er-do-wells in their own country trying to come into our country. And we have this asylum crisis that's caused by folks just asserting asylum claims without any good faith basis, but we allow them in anyway to adjudicate them. So that's a major issue that we've exposed. And we've also exposed on the border that there's still this catch and release policy where the Border Patrol is capturing people, turning them over to ICE, and ICE is releasing them, you know, by the busload into the United States. And this is continuing, I'm sure, frustratingly to the president under the Trump administration. But you know, you could go back in terms of the current debate in Congress, and that was obviously what the State of the Union was about, because the president's considering what powers he has that he can get to secure the border or utilize to secure the border. A national emergency, or as I suggest, just deploying the military generally. You don't need a national emergency, but there are other things he can do. But the price for admission, I think many Republicans have convinced themselves to get security at the border, is amnesty. I don't think the other side would ever agree to amnesty in exchange for border security because they don't believe in border security. But B, we already have experience with what amnesty does. In 2005, or 2006 and 2007, Judicial Watch found when George Bush was talking about an amnesty, folks were crossing the border to try to get it. And because the Border Patrol was asking the question, are you coming to crossing the border because of discussions about amnesty? And the response was, of course we are. You know, we're not stupid. And so the Bush administration got wind those questions were being asked, and the numbers were not good because it embarrassed their policy, and they tried to suppress it. And Judicial Watch exposed that even talking about amnesty increases illegal immigration. And then you go into the Obama administration, where through executive fiat, he starts granting amnesty to these so-called dreamers, this DACA amnesty, where individuals who are unlawfully present are provided immunity from deportation and allowed to work here contrary to law. Outrageous violation of the Constitution. And we found that he promised us, don't worry, I won't allow anyone to take advantage of this program without going through careful background vetting. Well, in fact, the security checks were not done, and Judicial Watch's documents that we uncovered through FOIA showed that the DACA amnesty meant no background checks. So that promise was broken. And the reason it was broken is because they couldn't handle the numbers. So whenever you hear about amnesty, and they say, well, don't worry, we'll make sure everyone who gets amnesty is going to be well vetted and no one will benefit from it who shouldn't. Don't you believe it. It's the government. They can't track who's coming and going legally, let alone being able to figure out the backgrounds of every illegal alien unlawfully present here.